Hey folks, Doug Blake with Body Design University. Welcome to another of our weekly studies. And today we're going to talk about training frequency. I've seen any number of questions and I'm asked quite often, what is the best number of days per week to train? How often should I train each muscle group? How often should I be working out in general? How often should I do cardio training versus how often should I do resistance training? Can I do push-ups every day? Right. So the basically the same questions really in a much more general way can be answered when we talk about training frequency. We got to try to make this as pretty straightforward as possible because it really comes down to what it is our clients are looking to accomplish. So that's one of the things. And when I start the presentation here, very straightforward. It won't take a whole lot of time to get through this because you've got to make a determination and a decision based on your business model. And that's really what's going to be the ultimate determinant of how you train people. Now, keep in mind, and I know this is the case because we hear it all the time, is the trainer or the individual that's looking to become a trainer is already working out and they already have a lot of information, some not as much, but already have a good amount of information. You've been looking at the web, you've been talking to other people, and you want to know what the best training frequency is for you, right? And so that's why I want to kind of go over. This is going to be from module 2, which is the science module itself, and it's coming from lesson number 4. Now, just keep in mind, from a real life perspective, we don't need to spend a whole lot of time discussing all the different variations of training frequency. Oh, no. We've pretty much got it well understood for the average client. But I want to go through it so you understand how to explain it to somebody if you had to, and to kind of clarify in your own mind, because again, like I say, there's so much information out there right now on the internet, as with everything else with exercise and nutrition. You have to be able to kind of sift through all this information. At the end of the day, all you've got to do is go to NCBI, which is the studies and research website that will give you pretty much everything you ever want to know or learn when it comes to actual research studies. Now, remember, that's not the only way we understand and learn things. Obviously, we have a ton of experiential information as well. But when they start to align and come together, you can be pretty well assured that you've got a good strategy for something such as training frequency. And yes, there's a million research studies just on training frequency alone, because it is one of the variables, one of the variables that we would always be using when we are determining how to actually train our clients. But again, with that being said, the goal is ultimately to take a step back and ask yourself the most important question, which is what does my business model allow me to do? And since, by the way, just so you know, there's a lot of inconsistencies in the research, you're kind of up in the air when it comes to determining training frequency. But what I can tell you is that over the years, we have come to pretty well determined that no more than 3 days per week. Let me say that again, no more than 3 days per week of resistance training. See, this is where we can get confused. There's resistance training, i.e., training your pecs, training squats, doing dumbbell curls. There's that type of training. And then there's everything else, right? So there's resistance training, there's flexibility training, there's yoga. A lot of those modalities of training you can do every day. But when it comes to resistance training, this is where the neuromuscular system and the musculoskeletal system itself gets taxed the most. And that's why the concept of recovery is so important. So just going to tell you right before we look at this little quick presentation right off the bat, no more than 3 days a week. Now, I just had somebody actually ask me, where do I move from the 3-day week from there if I'm going to increase training frequency? Well, the answer is 4 days a week, right? Or 5 days a week, or you can even do 6 days a week, but that's going to be problematic for the average client. So let's go ahead and I'm going to share my screen for you and we'll get started real quick, because essentially training frequency really comes down to some very basic variables. And the first one we look at is going to be whether or not doing more, frequency wise, is better. Remember the variables. There's training frequency, training intensity, right? And training duration. Now, I can train 3 days a week. Now, think about this for a second. I can train 3 days a week for 5 minutes in my 3 workouts. Is that going to provide enough training stimulus? Of course not, right? So there's this balance, and I take you to the logical extreme. What if I trained 1 day a week for 5 hours? Now, my training frequency is once per week. My training duration is 5. Could you imagine? Now, think about this. Could you imagine training your quads for 4 hours on Monday? Meaning squats and lunges and a whole bunch of exercises, what we would call high volume training. Could you imagine doing that? What would happen on Tuesday? You wouldn't be able to walk. Probably wouldn't be able to walk for about a week. So the training frequency obviously is related to other variables. So the question is, more better? I don't know if more is better. If you're training for 10 minutes in a particular resistance training workout, probably you want to do more frequent workouts if that's the case. So it's a difficult question to answer. Is more better? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes some folks are doing too much training frequency. They're training 3 days a week and they are overtraining. They're doing actually too much. Now, we normally would look at that and go, well, how could that be? Well, the answer is because that particular individual may not have the recovery capability. So this is the question. Shouldn't I be doing 4 days a week or 5 days a week or 6 days a week? And the answer is, well, training wise for cardio, absolutely. You should be training every day. You can train cardio 6 days a week. There's nothing wrong with that. Particularly if it's moderate intensity, low, moderate, or even moderate to high intensity. Absolutely. You can train at those type of frequencies. But resistance training, not recommended. Okay. So the other question I always ask is, well, top athletes train much more than 3 days a week, don't they? And the answer is I don't know. Some do, some don't. Depends on the athlete. Depends on what the ultimate goal is. So you see where we're starting to get to. If you're looking for an ideal, perfect training frequency scenario, I can't give it to you. But what I can tell you is that from a business perspective, as a personal trainer, given what we know about the average apparently healthy adult, the answer is yeah, top athletes train probably quite a bit more than those individuals. Those individuals are going to work out 1, 2, or 3 days a week, 3 days being max resistance training. So do top athletes? Well, sure, some do. Some train twice a day. But remember, not all of these athletes, top athletes, do resistance training multiple times during the week. Some do full body conditioning workouts. Some do split routines, right? And a lot of athletes that have different outcome goals train once a week during the off season and don't do any resistance training during season, right? Everything is calisthenics, standard conditioning type of training with actual workouts for their particular athletic events. So do top athletes, right? So there's 2 questions, and I hope that didn't confuse you anymore, but that tells you something about the topic of training frequency, where we don't really know from a purely physiological perspective what is the best training frequency. And again, the research goes left and right on it. Some says do more training frequency or higher levels of frequency. Others say do less based on goals. Okay. And if your goal is pure hypertrophy, if you are a bodybuilder trying to increase hypertrophic effect, then the general consensus is yes, more training frequency up to a certain point. And for you or me, I don't know what that's going to be. Again, it's based on recovery, but the general consensus, especially in the research, is that more frequency, right, is going to actually create the volume generation necessary on a weekly basis to help enhance hypertrophic response. But see, here's what happens is that some people look and go, well, I guess that is the defining factor, more training days per week. Well, no, your endocrine system, your caloric intake, your recovery ability, right? Your age, your sex, all of these things now play a part in whether or not you actually do make gains in hypertrophy. In some cases, we have to tell people to back off. I don't know how many young guys I've told this to. You're training 6 days a week, 5 days a week, even 4 days a week. No, 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 no. No, your body is, especially if you're a natural competitor and you're not using androgenic hormones. In the case of the use of androgenic hormones, well, we kind of just take the paper roll and just throw it out the window, because at that point, more than likely, it doesn't matter how many days a week you train. So what are your goals? If it's strength related, then remember, strength training, specific strength and power training is related to much higher resistance loads during particular exercises, which actually requires more recovery time between workouts. There are top power lifters, for instance, that train squats once a week, heavy leg training squat workouts once a week. Some will do twice. I don't really know or have never heard of, I mean, I could be wrong, of top level power lifters training their quads and legs and doing squats 3 days a week. They would simply never recover, even with the use of androgens. So got to keep in mind your goals. And this is where now volume, and when we talk about volume, what are we talking about? Let me go ahead and show you real quick. I'll just draw something here for you. Remember, volume, let me get that out of there. Volume is going to be the total number of repetitions. See, I'm just writing reps up here. Reps multiplied times the number of sets. So how do you like that? I put that right up over there for you. It's the total number of reps that you do in a particular workout. Now, volume is a little nebulous in one sense, because I can actually consider volume as just the total number of repetitions in a workout. When I go to train on Monday, I do 3 exercises, 3 sets of each for 10 reps, right? So I do 3 exercises, 3 times, 3 sets for each exercise. That's 3 times 3. That's 9 total sets. And I do approximately 10 reps for all 9 of those sets. Well, my volume for that particular workout is 90 reps. 90 reps is going to have a different physiological effect. All of the variables being equal, it's going to have a different physiological effect than 150 reps, right? It makes sense if we look at this from a sort of academic mathematical perspective. Now I can also, obviously I can throw in, if I'm interested in my weight and my load, I can multiply that times the total amount of weight that I've used. That's going way beyond what we would ever do with clients. But the idea is that if you want to really kind of scratch below the surface and look at this more mathematically, scientifically, you would say reps times sets for the entire workout. You could also then ask another question, and this is what I would always ask athletes, particularly athletes and young guys, bodybuilders in particular. What is the total volume of training for the week? See, that's where training frequency can actually be modulated a little bit. I got guys training 5 days a week, and their volume, when I add up all the total number of repetitions that they do, all their exercises, all their sets, all these workouts throughout the week between Monday and Saturday, if that's the case, and I total it up, and it's something like 2,000, 3,000 total repetitions, I go, whoa, that's way too much volume for your body to recover from. You simply can't, your body's recuperative system simply cannot cope with and deal with the necessary adaptive responses that are required for hypertrophy. So my first thought is training frequency, back it from 5 days a week or 4, back it down 1 day. All right, whatever split routine you want to do at that point. But the point, you get the idea, is that volume becomes a significant indicator, right? Or it could be the effect. So the cause is training frequency, and this is your effect, total volume of training. But it can also be that your total volume of training is being split across a training frequency that you have decided upon. So training frequency is definitely going to be correlated to volume. Yes, I know volume and intensity, whatever, I'm not too concerned about that. But training frequency, given everything else being equal, i.e. intensity, has this correlation with volume. And then, of course, training frequency is also a condition of whether it's full body versus split routine. Interesting studies that have come out recently where they compare, and these are athletes that they use in these studies, athletes that do 2 full body workouts, right? They try to keep the volume the same for the research purposes, and they do full body workouts with a standard amount of volume versus doing split routines where muscle groups are trained multiple times during the week. So full body twice a week, and then generally like a push pull type of split routine, perform 2, 3, or even 4 days a week. Again, you can understand that it's the total amount of volume, not just in the workout now, but on each individual muscle group. Something to keep in mind is not every muscle group recovers at the same rate as other muscle groups. The general understanding is that smaller muscles, and I would think this makes sense, will recover quicker. So technically I can train my biceps 3 days a week and they would not, quote, overtrain, versus training my quads, much larger muscle, a lot more muscle mass. Training my quads with significant volume may have me training them only once per week, but yet I got my biceps and my triceps and these smaller muscle groups that perhaps I can train. All of a sudden, now it's a scheduling disaster. So all of that being said, recovery, let's get out of schedule. Recovery ability is going to determine. So you biceps can recover faster than your quadriceps or your hamstrings can recover. So what are you going to do? You're going to train biceps on Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and then your quads on Tuesday. All of a sudden now it becomes, and that's a recovery ability component too, because your entire body has to recover from a particular workout, but it's your schedule. Come on, folks. That's kind of the business side of this, is that as a trainer, I've got to create a scenario that makes sense in my business, which means I can't be scheduling all these different crazy workouts. So when you're talking about, now this, remember, we're talking module 2, but when you get to module 4, which is the business module, that's when the rubber meets the road. And we basically say, look, for the most part, it doesn't make that much of a difference whether a person trains twice a week or 3 times a week in the broad scheme of things, particularly if their diet is on track and they are on point with, it doesn't make that much of a difference. Also, if they're doing cardio training every other day of the week, training frequency for actual resistance training doesn't make that much of a difference. Okay. Now I know for some folks, they got to be working out an hour and a half. Well, we're already on a totally different subject. I put that in red because that is ultimately the deciding factor for training frequency. Just keep that in mind. Your business, the business itself, right? The actual training that you're doing with folks needs to have a model associated with it. Okay. You don't want to be doing crazy scheduling and allowing people to train different muscle groups and no. Again, once you get to module 4, you're going to find out that there's a very, very effective standardized business model that puts people max 3 days per week training frequency. Now that's a push-pull, right? Push, pull, legs, split 2 days a week, upper body, lower body. We recommend train each body part once a week. And I know some of you are going, oh my goodness, I train my legs twice a week. And my question, of course, is always, well, why? What is that doing? If your nutrition is not the way it should be, it doesn't matter whether you train twice or 3 times a week. It doesn't matter whether you train your quads 3 times a week or once a week, to be honest with you. And then the type of training that you're doing as well. So keep in mind, training frequency, it's actually a pretty important variable. However, when you look at it from the business perspective, you set up a basic schedule. Everybody, all of your clients follow it. It keeps the insanity level down quite a bit. You can train with me once a week, a full body workout, twice a week, upper body, lower body workout, or 3 days a week, push, pull, and legs, period. And at that point, the physiology part of this, it's not going to make much of a difference one way or the other. If you're following a nutrition plan and you're exercising 3 days a week, max resistance, but cardio on the other days, you're doing everything you can to maximize the goals that your clients have. Keep in mind, yes, I do understand if you are a bodybuilder or an athlete, this doesn't necessarily work all the time. It actually doesn't. 4 days a week, upwards of 5 days a week, depending on the athlete, may be the way to go. But in that case, training frequency goes up, but then duration of the workout goes down. And there's more we can talk about with that. But if you have any other questions, you can message me, of course. But more importantly, put your questions into this private Facebook group. You can always, again, keep in mind, you can always talk to your success coach as well. Call them if you have any questions. Remember, every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Corey and I do a Q&A. Please come on board with us. Ask us any questions, and we'll be more than happy to help you out. So best of luck with this particular topic and module 2, of course, and the rest of the course. Have a great weekend. Thanks.